Welcome back to the Crypto World channel, everyone. My name is Josh, and right now, while Bitcoin is still potentially repeating history on this chart right here, in the immediate short term, the price of Bitcoin is starting to see a bit of a bounce from close to this area of support right here, and also playing out an oversold signal in the immediate short term alongside the US stock market playing out an oversold signal in the shorter term. So this is something that we need to pay attention to, despite the fact that we're seeing huge outflows right now from the Bitcoin ETFs, which I'll talk about in just a moment, alongside Ethereum also currently running into and starting to bounce from this crucial line of support here, while Solana is doing something similar, running into and bouncing from this important Fibonacci level, acting as support. So I'll be talking about all of that and more later in the video, so definitely watch to the end. First of all, just before taking a look at the Bitcoin and crypto charts today, taking a quick look at the US stock market, and I'm recording this video right before the stock market's about to open, but giving you a quick update on what happened with the rest of the trading day over the last one day. This right here is the S&P 500 index on the 1 hour time frame, and we can see that right now in the short term, just over the last 1 to 2 days, we've started to finally see a little bit more of a bounce in the short term, thanks to, of course, this oversold signal in the 1 hour RSI. As usual, when we hit oversold, that is basically a signal telling us that we've gone too far to the downside too quickly just in the short term, and we need a little bit of time to reset and have a little bit of a relief to reset the RSI out of oversold. So that's what's happening right now in the short term. It's basically the opposite to an overbought signal, telling us that we're overheated and we need to cool off a little bit. But just keep in mind, we're not fully in the clear yet. We've not fully invalidated this bearish divergence. Technically speaking, this RSI is still in a bearish trend, despite the fact that, of course, we've hit oversold, and perhaps soon in the coming days it could start to reverse a little bit. But technically, as of recording this video, we're not yet in the clear. We've not yet invalidated the bearish divergence, so keep in mind it's still possible we could see a little bit of a struggle in the shorter term for the US stock market in the coming days. But right now, obviously playing out this oversold signal, this can provide just a short-term relief for not just stocks but also crypto. And if we're taking a look at some Bitcoin news today, we can see that over the last couple of days, Tuesday, Wednesday, we saw massive net outflows from the Bitcoin ETFs. We now have the numbers for the last couple of days here. And of course, Monday, the stock market was closed for trading, so we have no inflows or outflows for Monday. But we could see here on Tuesday and Wednesday, massive net outflows. First of all, Tuesday was a net outflow of around $479 million US. Wednesday was a net outflow of over $708 million US. And so that's actually one of the worst days for the Bitcoin ETFs that we've seen in quite a while. So obviously not great for the Bitcoin price action. This is, of course, causing some sell pressure because essentially, in case you're new to all of this, this is spot Bitcoin ETFs, which means if we're seeing outflows, that's basically investors selling the ETFs or withdrawing their money out of the ETFs, which basically means the ETF providers like BlackRock, Fidelity, etc. are having to effectively sell spot Bitcoin in order to pay out those outflows. And so in other words, due to the fact that investors withdrew, let's just say $356 million US from the BlackRock ETF just yesterday on Wednesday, of course, that means BlackRock dumped over $356 million worth of Bitcoin just on Wednesday. So ultimately, once again, a bit of sell pressure coming from the Bitcoin ETFs. But with that being said, taking a look at the Bitcoin charts today on the weekly time frame, nothing much has changed over the last 1 day on this time frame right here. So the super trend indicator still sitting in the red, and of course we still have this massive bearish divergence to watch out for, technically still active on the weekly Bitcoin price chart. And if we're taking a look at the 3-day time frame, we've come very close to invalidating this bullish divergence on the 3-day chart, but we're not there just yet. Obviously, as I've explained in recent videos here on the channel, if we start to see, for example, a breakdown below this ascending line of support here in the RSI, that would be an invalidation signal. Or if we create any lower lows in the RSI or in the price, those would also be invalidation signals to invalidate this bullish divergence. So once again, we've not yet technically invalidated the bullish divergence, but we are getting very close to possibly doing that. But either way, if we're taking a look at the daily Bitcoin price chart, obviously over the last few days, we've already broken back below that key area on the price chart in between 92 to 94,000. Previously, over the last couple of months, it was very significant resistance. So obviously it was a big deal once we broke out above that area, but we needed to hold above that area to keep the break breakout active, and we failed to do that, therefore invalidating the breakout. So obviously, like I've explained over the last few days, that was a short-term bearish signal breaking back below 92 to 94,000, and now we're back in this sideways price range right here, the previous sideways price range in between this support and this resistance. Obviously, resistance once again at around 92 to 94,000, and this support for the sideways price range at around 85 to 86,000. And as I explained in more detail in my last video here on the channel, right now the price of Bitcoin is potentially repeating history. As always, no such thing as a guarantee. Just because we saw this outcome last time, it doesn't guarantee we're going to see the exact same thing this time around. But keep in mind, we're seeing very similar price action and very similar price structure right now compared to what we saw around April 2022. And so first of all, the couple of months leading up to April, so around February, entering into March, entering into April 2022, we saw a lot of choppy sideways price action with a strong horizontal area of resistance with higher lows building during that range right there. And then eventually we saw a breakout confirm, which at that time was technically a bullish signal, at least until we invalidated the breakout with a break back to the downside, back below that crucial line that we needed to hold above to keep the breakout active. And then once we invalidated the breakout, we ended up going much lower in the coming weeks and months. And right now, once again, we've seen something very, very similar over the last couple of months. A lot of choppy sideways price action, a strong horizontal area of resistance with higher lows building during that price range, and then a confirmed breakout, and then a break back to the downside, invalidating the breakout. And right now, we're basically where we were around early to mid-April 2022. And so once again, if history is any indication, we could potentially see more bearish price action to come within the next 1 month or so. Once again, this is not necessarily a short-term signal telling us to expect a dump today or tomorrow, but just keep in mind, if we're talking about the next few weeks, the next 1 month, obviously just be cautious right now. As always, no guarantees, but just be aware that we are following very similar price structure compared to what we saw back here. And if we're zooming into the shorter term, taking a look at the 6-hour Bitcoin price chart right now, as of recording this video, the price of Bitcoin, once again, as I said in the intro of this video, is starting to see a bit of a bounce from this area or level of support here, and also bouncing from oversold here in the 6-hour Bitcoin RSI. As usual, if we hit oversold, that's a signal telling us that very soon we're likely going to see a bit of a relief. So either some choppy sideways price action, maybe a slight little bounce moving forward, not necessarily confirming a massive bullish trend reversal, but just a little bit of a break from all of the bearish price action is quite likely for maybe a couple of days in order to help to reset the RSI out of oversold, which can technically give us more room towards the downside later on. So keep that in mind. And as for support and resistance to watch out for in the shorter term, we have this level of support based on previous support at around just under 87,000, so around 86.8k to 87,000. And obviously just recently over the last 1 day, the price bounced from around 87.1k to 87.2k. So at give or take 87,000, we do have a decent amount of support, at least in the short term, around that area. And as for resistance, as of recording this video, we're currently testing a potential area of resistance here at around 90,000, give or take $90,000. But if we confirm a breakout back above 90,000, obviously in the short term, that would be a bit of a bullish signal. And in that situation, we could start to find a bit of resistance at close to 92,000. And then once again, a lot of resistance, especially at around 94,000 if the price actually gets back up there. But once again, keep an eye on what the US stock market is doing. If, for example, in the next day or two, we continue a little bit more of a relief in the short term, and then let's just say if we eventually continue another dump at some point later on, expect something similar to that for a lot of the crypto market. So while this relief is happening in the stock market, once again, that can help Bitcoin and crypto just in the immediate short term have a little bit of a relief. But overall, looking at the next few weeks or the next 1 month, for example, we're not in the clear yet. We still have to be cautious. And that's especially the case due to the fact that we also have a lot of liquidity building right below the price of Bitcoin here on the Bitcoin liquidation heat map, building at around 85,500, give or take. So really in between 85.2k to 85.8k, we have a lot of liquidity building around there. And usually, not always, but usually the price of Bitcoin tends to move towards where we have a lot of liquidity to wipe out those levels, especially if the liquidity is close to the current price of Bitcoin. So keep that in mind. at roughly 85,500, that is still a bit of a price target to pay attention to. Not necessarily going to hit that in the next hour or anything like that, but just be aware of that level if we're talking about maybe the next couple of days or the next week, for example. But in terms of what I really expect just in the next 24 hours, the next one day, I do continue to expect a little bit of a relief from all of the bearish price action. So once again, don't expect a lot of strength, don't expect a lot of bullish momentum, but just a bit of a break from all of the bearish price action is quite likely in the short term as we're playing out this oversold signal, basically stabilizing a little bit after this major drop in the short term, especially if stocks continue a bit of a relief. Once again, that can really help with a relief for Bitcoin and crypto just in the short term. And obviously, if you want to trade any of these moves in the price of Bitcoin or any crypto, you need to be set up ready to go on a crypto exchange. And if you use the first link below the video in the description and in the pinned comment, that first link below the video will take you to the 2bit crypto exchange where you can take advantage of some major bonuses that are only available using that link. For example, sign up bonuses, trading bonuses, etc. Over 18,000 USDT in bonuses that you can claim using that first link below the video to 2bit just by simply trading crypto. And on top of that, 2bit just recently partnered with La Liga, so there's currently a huge event happening right now over on 2bit of over 800,000 USDT worth of prizes just by trading crypto. So once again, if you're going to be trading crypto anyway or preparing to take the next trading opportunity, you might as well check this out. You might as well take advantage of this using that first link below the video to 2bit. And in case you're wondering, 2bit is also a no KYC exchange. But if you want another option out there, another exchange that I also personally use where you can also claim some extra bonuses on, then in that situation, check out the second link below the video in the description and in the pinned comment, because the second link below the video will take you to this page right here over on the Pionex crypto exchange, where you can also take advantage of some major bonuses just by simply making an account using that link below the video, completing KYC. You get a 50 USDT bonus onto your Pionex account, and on top of that, there's deposit bonuses here. If you deposit as little as 100 USDT, you get a 100 USDT bonus on your account. If you deposit 10,000, you get a 1,000 USDT bonus onto your Pionex account. And so obviously a bunch of effectively free money from the exchange, which you can claim it using that second link below the video to Pionex. So once again, if you're going to be trading crypto anyway, you might as well take advantage of these extra bonuses over here on Pionex using that link below the video, the second link below the video. But with that being said, taking a quick look at the Bitcoin dominance chart on the daily time frame, and right now overall in terms of the trend or the price structure on the daily Bitcoin dominance chart, we're still looking very neutral, basically bouncing around relatively sideways. And as for support and resistance, we have a lot of support in between around 58.5% to almost 59% acting as support. And as for resistance, we have some resistance at close to 60%, but really the next significant area of resistance is sitting in between 60.5% to 61%. And so basically just continue to expect very similar price action for a lot of the major altcoins out there on average compared to what Bitcoin's doing, which means if maybe in the short term we see a slight little relief and then maybe eventually some sort of dump later on, expect something very similar to that for a lot of the altcoins. So even if you don't hold Bitcoin or don't trade Bitcoin and you're only in the altcoin market, still at least keep an eye on what Bitcoin is doing to figure out what could be likely going to happen for a lot of the altcoin market. But with that being said, taking a look at Ethereum on the daily time frame, and right now the price of ETH is coming in for a retest of this Fibonacci level, which originally was a bit of resistance, actually first support, then resistance, and then support, and is now once again potentially acting as resistance. And this is sitting at around $3,040 to $3,050, but really in between 3,000 to 3.1k, we could likely find resistance in that area now that we've obviously broken below that area and we're coming in for a retest from the downside, testing that area. And so once again, expect some resistance as we're testing that area right there on the price chart. And as for support, we have a lot of support as we start to approach around 2.8k. But if we're taking a look at this daily Ethereum price chart, right now we have this ascending line of support still coming into play. Obviously, it's the previous ascending line of support, which is still working as support, obviously, and this is sitting at just above 2.9k, more specifically around 29.30. And so basically continue to expect support along this line right here, which at least for now is still good news because it means we're still forming higher lows despite the major rejection from this resistance, which by the way, this resistance in the short term is sitting at around 3280 to 3.4k, so especially around 3.3k to 3.4k, we have a lot of resistance around there on the price chart. But once again, we're still holding this ascending line of support, continuing to form higher lows, which is potentially continuing to form a bit of an ascending triangle pattern if ideally we hold this support and continue a further bounce. And if we're zooming further into the short term, taking a look at that 8-hour Ethereum price chart, obviously over the last few days, in fact almost a week now, we've been perfectly playing out this warning signal, this bearish divergence on the 8-hour Ethereum price chart. And usually, once again, a bearish divergence means we're most likely going to see either a pullback or at best maybe some choppy sideways price action. Basically expect a lot of weakness, lacking bullish momentum after confirming a bearish divergence. So obviously over the last 1 week, that's exactly what we've been seeing. A lot of weakness, a lot of a lack in bullish momentum, obviously. So mostly bearish price action playing out. But like I talked about recently here on the channel, we've just now hit oversold finally in the RSI here on the 8-hour Ethereum price chart. And once again, an oversold signal means we perhaps went too far to the downside too quickly, and we now need a little bit of time in the short term to reset the RSI out of oversold, which means expect either a slight little bounce or maybe some choppy sideways price action. So basically a bit of a break or a relief from all of the bearish price action just in the short term, maybe for a few days, but not necessarily a massive high momentum bullish trend reversal. So keep that in mind. Don't expect a lot of strength, but just expect a bit of a break from all of the bearish price action, maybe for the next couple of days as a very likely scenario while we're playing out this oversold signal. And if we're taking a look at Solana on the daily time frame right now and over the last 1 to 2 days, we've perfectly run into my exact level of support here based on this Fibonacci level sitting at around 124 to 125. And so far, we've pretty much perfectly bounced from that exact level on the price chart. So obviously continue to expect a lot of support at around $124 to $125. And as for resistance, we still have a lot of resistance in this area that I've been talking about for a very long time, sitting in between 143 to 147. So obviously continue to expect a lot of resistance there and a lot of support at 124 to 125. And so ultimately we're still in a bit of a sideways price range like we've been in for months, bouncing between that support and that resistance. And as for other support and resistance to watch out for, we could find a bit of short-term resistance at around 134 to 135 based on this previous support flipping into new resistance, and also more support down towards 117 to 119 if we first confirm a break below around 124. And as usual, Solana and a lot of these major altcoins will likely follow very similar price action to whatever Bitcoin is doing, which means if Bitcoin right now in the short term is playing out a slight little relief from oversold, expect something similar to that just for the next 1 or 2 days as a very likely scenario for Solana. In other words, expect maybe some choppy sideways price action or very, very slight little bounce. Don't expect a lot of strength in the market, but just a little bit of a break from all of the bearish price action is quite likely in the next 1 or 2 days, just in the short term here. And if we're taking a look at the price of XRP on the weekly time frame, not a lot has changed over the last 1 day on this chart right here. So we still have a massive bearish divergence, still technically active on the weekly XRP price chart, but we also still have a lot of support at around $1.80. So keep that in mind. That's really the final significant level of support before potentially much lower prices, like for example, $1.30 to $1.40 could be a likely price target towards the downside if we first confirm a break below $1.80. I want to make that clear. For now, that's still acting as support for the price of XRP. And if we're zooming into the daily time frame, once again, we could see a lot of support at give or take $1.80. We've seen many important bounces from around that level on the price chart. And as for resistance, in case we see a little bit more of a relief in the short term, expect resistance at around $2.05, especially at that level right there, but really in between $2 to $2.05 as an area of resistance to watch out for. And above that, we could find a small amount of resistance at around $2.17, but the next significant area of resistance above $2.05 is really in between $2.30 to $2.40. And in terms of my expectations moving forward, obviously still expect a lot of weakness. We're clearly looking very weak, lacking bullish momentum on this daily chart right here, but just in the very short term, the imminent short term, the next 1 or 2 days, expect a little bit of a break from all of the bearish price action. Once again, don't expect a lot of strength, but maybe some choppy sideways price action, maybe a very, very slight little bounce, essentially just following all of these other altcoins and following Bitcoin and stocks in the short term with a slight little break from all of the bearish price action is quite likely in the short term for XRP. And if we're taking a quick look at the price of Chainlink on the daily time frame, we're seeing something very similar for Chainlink. Obviously, we're running into this crucial level of support based on these previous lows sitting at pretty much exactly $12. So still expect a lot of support really in between $11.90 to $12, acting as a key area of support. And if we break below around $11.90, in that situation, would likely see another $1 drop at least towards the downside, which is down towards around $10.90 to $11 as the next area of support towards the downside to watch out for if we first confirm a break below $11.90 to $12, which is the current support we're running into and currently bouncing from right now. And in terms of what's very likely going to happen in the short term, it's basically the same thing as what I've been saying throughout the video. Once again, a lot of these cryptos are highly correlated to each other, which means expect either a little bit of choppy sideways price action or very, very slight little bounce. Once again, don't expect a lot of strength, don't expect a lot of bullish momentum, but maybe just a slight little break in the shorter term for the next day or two from all of the bearish price action could be quite likely moving forward for Chainlink, especially if Bitcoin and stocks continue those slight little reliefs in the short term. And as for resistance, obviously we do have some resistance around 1270 to 1280 and a lot of resistance closer towards 1330 to 1350. And once again, if you want to trade any of these moves in the price of any crypto, check out those links below this video to those exchanges if you want to take advantage of those massive bonuses that are available using those links if you want to. So if you're going to be trading crypto anyway, you might as well check it out, take advantage of those bonuses using those links. But if you want to actually know how you can trade any of these moves in the price of any crypto, no matter what direction the price goes, then make sure to watch these videos popping up right here on your screen. The video in the top left shows you how you can profit from bullish or bearish price action using long positions or short positions, and the video in the bottom left shows you how you can easily profit from choppy sideways price action. But anyway, that is everything that I have to say for today. I really hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you all in the next video.